If you get the dreaded swine flu from your cousin Steve, just come see Dr. Mario.
Hello, and welcome to Behind the Fuzz number 7. I'm the Wise Mankey, and I'm 7 more episodes away from catching up with the Working Man's blog. Tonight, I thought I'd try my hand at something different this time. I know it's been about more than a week since its release, but I feel the need to talk about a movie which I personally had been looking months to seeing for a while now, The Wolfman, which, as some of you know, is the remake of the 1930-1940 classic, now starring Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Hugo Weaving, Emily Blunt, and so on. Now, before I actually give my initial review to it, there's something that I'd like to discuss first. On an episode of Wha-Chow a couple weeks ago, the master of Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, if that's what you want to call him, LittleKuriboh, was a guest on the show, and he had actually seen The Wolfman at least a day before I did, and he had shared his thoughts on the show, and this is what he had to say.
I got back from a midnight screening of The Wolfman before I came on to do this.
Oh, how
Is it
was
any
it?
good? Any good?
Have you seen any other werewolf film ever?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have seen The Wolfman, and not just because they basically took the original Wolfman movie and remade it. They just didn't do anything interesting with it. They hit all the buttons that you would expect them to hit. You could write this film in your sleep, and from the looks of things, the actors acted their way through it in their sleep as well. Because it's just like Benicio del Toro, who I actually respect a lot as an actor, it's just completely bland throughout. No matter what happens, it's like, I'm sorry. I am what they say I am. I'm sorry. What happened to my brother?
And so on and so forth. Now, as far as what LittleKuriboh said about it, I'm not going to say he's wrong, because everyone's going to have their opinion about it, and, I respect what most people will say about it, and far be it for me to say anything bad about LittleKuriboh, because I recently just became a fan of his work, so... However, what I do think should have been said was that this movie isn't for everyone, because, I'll admit Benicio del Toro's acting wasn't as good as Anthony Hopkins or Hugo Weaving was, but still, I personally enjoyed the movie. The setting and the characters that were involved, there was just a lot of things that I enjoyed about it personally. But the fact is, the movie isn't going to be for film enthusiasts, people who pay attention to every single detail and have high expectations of everything. And it's not for families, this isn't like the remake of The Mummy where it has a whole bunch of jokes in it and that you could take your kids to watch it. No, this movie is full of gore, and lots of it. So it's not for purists. But basically, I think this was more pitched towards hardcore fans of horror movies, because that's who I think they were just targeting, because the Wolfman, the original Wolfman, I'm pretty sure was a classic, and this was a completely different setting and whatnot, because it was the same characters and stuff, I guess, but it was just a lot more modernized, even though it was still in the past. What I'm basically getting at is, I won't go on record to say that this was the best horror remake of all time, because there's plenty of those out there, and pretty much like every third person is going to say that this horror remake was the best of all time, or that was the best horror remake of all time. I personally thought this was good. Not great, but, enough to make me want to get the DVD when it comes out. I won't say it's a 5-star movie, more like 3-star, 3.5 tops. And don't think that I'm being, biased about it, because I had a lot of hype put into it for like months now, because I felt like I could relate to the character of the Wolfman, or Lawrence Talbot, in the fact that he's a good-hearted man who has to deal with the darker side of himself. I had a personal connection with that. And one of the other reasons that I got extremely excited and hyped to see this movie was because last October at Universal Orlando, I went to Halloween Horror Nights ripped from the silver screen, and they had a haunted house that was based on the Wolfman movie before it was released in theaters. And it was the house that, in my opinion, was the best production out of all Halloween Horror Nights that night. So my recommendation is to only go see this movie if you're a hardcore horror fan. Because, like I mentioned, this movie isn't for everyone, but I think it's for the right crowd. And it's a shame that the movie didn't do as well as the frickin' Valentine's Day movie, but I honestly think it was a good enough remake to garner the attention and hype that it got from me. So there's my review of the movie. Remember, if you go to see this movie because of what I said and you end up not liking it, it looks like you'll just have to blame the boy who cried wolf.